Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I have a very special guest on the show this week. Elly, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kate. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm super excited to have you on. We're going to be diving into a few different topics today. But before we dive in, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. I'm Elly Young. I'm an alcohol-free life coach and hormone balancing expert. So I live in Southern California, and I have been alcohol-free for over 3 years now. And I've been coaching for about 2 years. And I really have made it my mission to help women kind of in this next phase of life. I'm 43, and I know that what most women are suffering from in this decade of life is hormone imbalance, and they are often really unaware just how much alcohol is impacting that. And so that's why I kind of tackle both. I help women, who might be a little bit shy about confronting their relationship with alcohol. If we approach it as, hey, how do you feel about balancing your hormones? Everybody's like, hell yeah, I could definitely use that. Who doesn't want to look better, feel better, sleep better? And then we kind of backdoor the alcohol piece and say, hey, did you know that bottle of wine is really not helping with your hormonal health?
Mm. Well, I love that because I will say, from the nutrition sort of point of view, and the women that I work with, they'll often come in and, yep, they're, in their 40s or maybe 50s, and perimenopause and menopause is, yeah, they're on the horizon. And we might talk about, maybe cutting back on alcohol, because often if I say, let's limit alcohol, that's often like oh, you can't take away my afternoon, my dinner wine, or you could take away like the wine that I'm when I'm cooking dinner, but you can't take away the wine when I'm eating dinner. And so often it feels like negotiations when,
Right.
I want to just say, let's just get rid of it.
Right. Yeah, it's tough because we always come from a place when we're talking about alcohol of feeling deprived if we can't have it. Like, most of the women you're working with, I'm sure, are super ambitious with their health. They're doing everything right. They're trying the diets, they're working out, they're eating clean, they're taking supplements, and yet the wine or whatever alcohol is this is how I was, is always that treat, that reward. And we believe that cutting that out is just one more thing we have to deprive ourselves. And so what I really help my clients do is shift the mindset that you're really not giving up anything. You're gaining so much because alcohol is hurting your health in so many different ways. It's hurting so many of your other health goals that it's truly just switching your mindset to being like, this is holding me back. And if I can cut this successfully, I'm going to feel so much better and I'm going to make so much more progress on my other goals.
Mm. And I want to circle back to that mindset. But before we do, most people know that alcohol isn't great for us. There's, warnings on the bottles that, we get told when you're pregnant, you shouldn't have any alcohol. So we know it's not good, but maybe people don't know why it's not good for us. Can you delve into that a little bit as well?
Yeah, particularly for women, I want to have like shout it from the rooftops. There should be more public service announcements about it because of our hormones. Women are just much more susceptible to the effects of alcohol. We make less of an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, which means that we don't process it as quickly as men. So for the same volume of alcohol, we are going to have a higher blood alcohol level. It's going to take longer for our system to process it. So it stays in our system longer, damaging us longer. And hormonally, what's going on is that when we are ovulating, actually, when estrogen's at its highest point, we are much more sensitive to the effects of dopamine. So that dopamine boost that alcohol provides, we experience higher highs during this period, and it creates more craving, and it actually leads us to have more rates of addiction, and just because of that hormonal effect. Additionally, in the back half of our cycle, when we go low with our progesterone and our estrogen, we experience PMS, those feelings of lowness. We are much more vulnerable to craving dopamine then as well. So we are much more likely to go for alcohol at those different points. So it causes so much more damage to women because of just our systems. We have less body fat, we have less water, we have more body fat, excuse me, and less water. So all of these reasons just make it that we are experiencing the toxicity of alcohol at a much higher level than men. And that causes cellular damage, and it ages us, it wrecks our sleep, and it wrecks our hormonal balance.
Mm.
Just to name a few.
Yeah, just a few. Now, is when it comes to alcohol too, is it like a dose effect? Is it like, well, you have one, you're pretty fine. You have two, well, those detrimental effects are going to sort of increase. And if you have three and four, it just exponentially gets worse.
Yes, exactly. I mean, more is obviously worse, but even a little bit now, they're saying is still there's no safe amount of alcohol to be had. Even one drink can raise your cancer risk. And even one drink, what it essentially does in your system is it raises your dopamine temporarily, gives you that boost. Your blood alcohol goes up for about 20 minutes. That's the buzz. That's what we're all after, right? Those feelings of euphoria. But then after that, one drink, your body releases dynorphin, and this is like the opposite of endorphins. It basically pulls you low, creating feelings of anxiousness, uncomfortable. We just think that it's the buzz wearing off, and really it's your brain just trying to create homeostasis. And then we go get that second drink. It never takes us as high as that first drink because the brain is really adaptive. It says, uh-oh, we don't want to go that out of balance again. So we're going to pre-release even more dynorphin. That's why alcohol is considered a depressant, because over time, with each subsequent drink, it pulls you lower and lower and lower. And these effects last in your system days. So we're essentially trading 20 minutes of a buzz for days of anxiousness, depressiveness, anxiety. And then to counter that effect in our brain, it releases adrenaline and cortisol. So that's why you get that anxiety in the middle of the night, that 3 a.m. wake up, or you have anxiety the next couple of days. So it's really just a roller coaster within your brain just from having even one drink.
And from if you are having a couple of drinks 2 or 3 times a week, you're only going to be just getting out, of that period when you hit your system with it again to then go back into it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news and such a downer, but it's just the truth. Yeah, your body and brain aren't recovering, even in like a 2 or 3 day period, and that's why your brain actually proactively keeps you in a low state in anticipation of those drinks. Your brain is really smart; it's really adaptive. So if you are regularly having a drink at like 5 o'clock every day, it recognizes that and it will pre-release that dynorphin, pulling you low, making you feel kind of anxious and crummy, and then you go get that first drink and you experience that first drink as being really satisfying, thinking, oh, I'm finally relaxing. Alcohol is helping me relax. But it's really just scratching an itch for the itch that it created. So it's kind of an ugly cycle, and we don't recognize it because drinking is so ubiquitous in our culture. We don't question it. It's so normalized. We're all doing it. And it's dangerous because of this.
Mm. And, it's obviously way better to not drink at all, but there may be, a special occasion and people go, yes, I would like to have a glass of alcohol. Are there some better than others, like as in spirits, do they affect you more so than say a glass of wine, or the darker liquids compared to the lighter liquids?
There is some kind of mythology out there about the different types of spirits, but unfortunately that's not really proven. It's really just the volume of the actual alcohol in each drink. We have a lot of expectations around different types of beverages that are more like conditioned into us. Like with wine, it's more like I'm relaxing, it's sophisticated. And so these preconceived kind of expectations of how we're supposed to feel really do, impact us. You think of tequila, you're often drinking like shots of it, so it's going to hit your system a lot quicker. And beer, again, is maybe a slower, more relaxed, like watching a game type of vibe. So again, it's really the alcohol, the content, the volume is really, there is no difference. However much you're drinking is the effect you're going to get.
Well, I think that's good to know too, because I think there's like, there's information out there that you can have this health hack and, have this
Right.
instead, and, it won't affect you as bad. So if we just know that all alcohol is going to affect our system in the same way, then, it means you can make more educated decisions, I think, as well. Now, we touched on mindset before, and if somebody does have that sort of mindset where they are linking alcohol with the sort of reward, at the end of a busy day day or a stressful day. How do we start to break that sort of patterning?
Yeah, so that's first, it's just awareness that this is the belief that's kind of calling the shots for you. So oftentimes we're just unaware that this subconscious belief is driving our behavior. We think, you know what, I'm going to make a rule for myself. I'm not drinking tonight. I'm going to make it all the way to Friday without drinking. And then 5 o'clock rolls around and you're like, oh, I've worked so hard today. I've been so good with my diet. I'm just going to have that one glass of wine, right? And that belief has been conditioned into us, especially for women, especially for mothers, that this is your permission to rest. This is your permission to have a break. And when we really investigate what it's doing to your body, what it's doing to your brain, we just talked about the effects of anxiety and depression and whatnot. You have to really ask yourself, like, is this really a reward? Is this how I want to reward myself? Something that wrecks my sleep, that's going to create low motivation the next day, that's going to hurt my fitness goals, and wreck my hormonal balance. All of these things women are really on top of these days, and they don't recognize that alcohol is kind of like the enemy number one. And so it's like, do I want to reward myself with that? And when you really start to kind of poke holes in that logic, it starts to unravel that belief, so that the next time you feel that urge, like, oh, I really want to like reward myself right now, and you go to reach for that bottle, you go, wait a minute, this is going to make my anxiety worse. And so you just give yourself that little bit of pause, that little bit of space with that new information in your head, and say, what would really be a reward for myself? How should I be treating myself here? And it's usually like, how about get out, get some sunshine? How about treat myself to a pedicure? How about, buy myself something that isn't going to like wreck my body and wreck my sleep?
How about a book on health and wellness?
Yeah, there you go.
And when
And I don't want to be like the killer of all fun, because people are like, well, that doesn't sound fun. I'm going to go read a book and do some like yoga nidra. And it's like, no, no, no. Once you do take a long enough break from alcohol, your pleasure circuits do reset. The problem with alcohol is it gives you such a crazy high boost of dopamine. Nothing can compete with that, right? Like you're like, oh, a little piece of chocolate, it gives you like a little blip, or, a beautiful sunset, it gives you a little blip. Over time with chronic drinking, our pleasure circuits get like blown out, because we're constantly giving ourselves so much that our brain is always releasing that dynorphin. So it's keeping you chronically low. So little things don't even register anymore. So a big enough break from alcohol, all of that sets. You've heard of a dopamine reset? Cutting alcohol is one of the best dopamine resets you can do, because all of a sudden the little things start feeling good again. And they call it the pink cloud effect, or the rose colored glasses effect, because you'll be walking around and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Look at the clouds, look at the sky. Everything starts to feel good again, because you're like, I haven't been dulling my brain down with a neurotoxin.
And the same thing happens with sugar when I'm working with a nutrition client and we start to cut back, their sugar intake. And it feels, again, hard at the start, because their taste buds have been conditioned, to these highly processed, zingy foods. And then once they've cut back that sugar for a few weeks and then they do have some, they're like, oh, I don't have that same craving for it anymore. And it tastes super sweet. And I never noticed that previously. So it also takes time as well.
Totally agree. Yeah, I know one of the things a lot of people lean on in early sobriety is sugar. And because you kind of compensate, because you're craving that some other type of dopamine boost. And I totally was guilty of this for about a year. And that's really when I started getting into hormone balancing and cycle syncing, because I was like, okay, I got to stop rewarding myself with food now. I rewarded myself with alcohol for decades, and now I'm rewarding myself with food. And so I had to kind of course correct from that. And my relationship with food completely changed when I learned how to cycle sync.
Oh, well, perfect segue. Let's
Yeah.
talk about cycle syncing. And can you explain what it is to start?
Sure. So cycle syncing is essentially living in a rhythm with your hormonal cycle. So we have the 4 different phases. And what most women don't know is that the hormones they're fluctuating all month long, and that we actually can be supporting those and avoiding a lot of the discomfort that comes with our cycle what one would call PMS by supporting our hormones with different types of nutrition and exercise. Like this blew my mind. I mean, I was a chronic overexerciser for a long time. I played Division I college soccer. I was a big runner. I tried to eat low carb most of my adult life. And I also got into fasting at some point when my husband did, and he was like dropping all this weight, and I would try it and it would like totally backfire. Some days I could do it. Other days I was like, I gained 2 pounds. How is that even possible? But I had no awareness of my cycle when I was trying to diet or when I was trying to work out. And once I learned that, like, oh, in this phase, you really want to be supporting estrogen. So this time is a really great time to like lean into lower carbohydrate, keto, or perhaps fasting. That's like your menstrual phase or your follicular phase. And then once you hit that ovulation phase, you want to start adding in some more carbohydrate. All of your hormones are peaking during ovulation. And so it's a great time to lean on what I call nature's carbohydrates, not pizza, not French fries, but like squash, zucchini, sweet potatoes, things like that. And then as you enter kind of the back half of your cycle, that's when progesterone is peaking. And progesterone does not like cortisol, so stress. It does not like intense workouts. So they say when cortisol is high, progesterone is shy. So we don't want to stress ourselves with fasting or low carbohydrate. Your blood sugar is actually going to naturally be higher in the back half of your cycle when progesterone's peaking. And so we want to support that with more carbohydrate and less exercise. So for a lot of women, they're like, whoa, even me, I was like really uncomfortable with like, okay, I got to dial it back, not work out as hard. But what I noticed is I started feeling so much better, less PMS. My boobs weren't sore. I didn't rage out on my family. Two key indicators for me that I was like, I'm onto something here. I feel so much better.
Yeah, well, there's some common symptoms, aren't they? Those PMS symptoms that can often creep through that I'm sure so many women can definitely relate to. Now, for the women listening in that go, oh, well, that sounds great, but maybe one, their cycle isn't regular, so they find it hard to work out what phase they're in. What can they
Right.
do?
Yeah, that's tricky. And I have a lot of clients like that in perimenopause when things are all over the place. And so what I recommend is get as close as you can to like a day one of your cycle, when the start date of your period was, and cycle your nutrition as if you have a normal cycle and try to do that as much as you can. And what you will notice, especially if you're really cleaning up your diet, a lot of the problems with irregular cycles is low progesterone or estrogen dominance. They're kind of the same thing, right? Because estrogen dominance is just a factor of your level of progesterone. And so in perimenopause, progesterone is naturally on the decline. Estrogen is as well, but it's not happening as fast. It starts to drop off closer to your 50s. But in your 40s, we're really experiencing that low progesterone, which is why sleep gets really tricky. And estrogen dominance is what is kind of the culprit for causing all of our discomfort and like bad PMS, heavy periods, bloating, breakouts, mood swings, poor sleep, all these things. And so what we want to do is clean up the diet as much as possible, remove as many of the toxins that are causing this estrogen dominance. And that can be anything from like the plastics that are in all the food, BPAs, PFAs, all those forever chemicals, unfiltered water, um, the toxins in our skincare. Unfortunately, you can't avoid it all. I don't want to be this mean person. It's like no alcohol and no this. We live in toxic worlds, unfortunately, and so what we have to learn how to do is avoid as much as possible, but also learn how to detox appropriately. And so learning how to detox estrogen is a key part of cycle syncing. Dry brushing is awesome, especially when estrogen is peaking during ovulation. You want to be eating cruciferous vegetables. These are going to help your liver detox any excess estrogen in your body and keep that ratio between your estrogen and progesterone at a healthy level. So I know that's a lot of information there. I covered quite a bit.
Yeah, but I love it because these are all they're simple things that people, can do. Number one, start tracking your cycle. That's a great place to start. And then, as you were sort of saying, have a look what's in your food, in your household cleaning products, in your body care products. Because when you turn over the back, if there's lots of numbers and words that you can't pronounce, then there generally shouldn't be in there. And I think sometimes it can be hard to try to find those sort of clean products, so to speak. So I know I always say to my clients, look for the paraben free and the phthalate free, start there in those really big ones.
Right.
If you can eat organic, lean into organic. And I know it's expensive and not everything is, possible to get. But then, we've got the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. So, looking into those just to maybe focus on those ones first. So I think just one step at a time is a great place to start. But all that information is amazing, I think, just for women to know in general.
Totally. Yeah. And I never recommend taking on so much at once. If alcohol is a factor in your life and you're like, I am really clean, I am doing all this dieting, but I'm in my 40s and my period's all over the place and I'm suffering a lot of like PMS, I would look at the alcohol first. That is such a big toxin and it's affecting so many different things that just starting there is going to be huge for your overall health. I mean, alcohol, one of the main things it does is it raises our cortisol. And when it raises your cortisol, it's messing up your sleep drastically. It's messing up your blood sugar and your insulin sensitivity, which is going to impact your sex hormones, the release of estrogen and progesterone. So it's just like this cascade of effects in your body, and they're all working against you dramatically. And it just becomes so acute in our 40s when hormone balance is so critical for our mood, for our weight gain, everything. And so that is really, I would start there before you try to do any more of like super cleaning up of your diet. You can try and do it all, but I know from experience with myself and with clients that like that's a lot of pressure on yourself, a lot of things to change at once. If you start with one, have it be the alcohol.
Mm. And you mentioned sleep before. I know that is one issue that a lot of women sort of start to struggle with as they hit sort of perimenopause and menopause. And you mentioned obviously cutting out the alcohol can really help. What are some of the other sort of lifestyle things we can do that may help with sleep?
Oh, I love this. So I sleep becomes so precious once you're not drinking because you actually start to get like real restorative sleep. You feel like a princess because you wake up and you're like, oh, it was like the best night ever, you know? And when your sleep gets messed up, you're very aware of it now. You're like, oh, I didn't get my full 8 hours. So there's a lot of there's a bunch of skills that I totally have adopted from Huberman Lab, but it's just sleep hygiene. And, some of the main ones are when you wake up early in the morning, getting that sunlight in your eyes within 30 minutes. This is really going to help set the circadian rhythms of the actual little cells in your eyes. And that starts all the cellular systems in your body saying, okay, it's morning. And that little clock then is set to say, okay, then we expect to go to bed at a certain time as well. And it will start to release that melatonin, that sleep hormone that's going to build up in your system throughout the day until it peaks, making you sleepy at night. If we are sleeping in and we don't have consistent sleep schedules, like some days we sleep in, other days we wake up, we go to bed at different times, those circadian rhythms get all off and your brain really doesn't know like when to release the melatonin that's going to help you sleep. Also, staying on our screens late at night, that light is going to mess with that circadian rhythm as well, because the brain is like, oh, wait, it's daylight out. Cut off the melatonin supply because we're still awake. There's still bright lights. So in my household, I go around, I start dimming lights, and then my kids are annoying and they like flip them on. And I'm like, no, we're trying to boost our melatonin right now. What are some of the other tricks okay, so caffeine is huge. And this is big for women trying to cut alcohol because a lot of times they lean on caffeine. Nothing past noon is usually a good rule of thumb for most people. Caffeine has like a 6 to 8 hour half-life in your body, meaning it will still be in your system 8 hours from now. So if you want to go to bed at 9, 10 o'clock, you need to do the math and back back away, 6 to 8 hours from then and make sure you're not having any caffeine. Um, that's some of my favorites. Another one is keeping your bedroom or your bed cool. Your body needs to drop in temperature like 2 to 3 degrees before you can fall asleep for an ideal sleep temperature. And this is really important for women in perimenopause or menopause who might be experiencing hot flashes. So try and keep the temperature cool in your room. I have invested in something it's called the Sleep 8 pod. It's like a mattress cover that goes around my mattress, and it has a little cooling unit, and it has this little hose, and it pumps cool water through, and you and your partner can have different temperatures. But essentially at bedtime, you set the time on, it starts to cool you. And then throughout the night, it monitors your temperature and adjusts with you. This is a game changer. It's one of my favorite things I've invested in. Highly recommend the Sleep 8. And I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but Sleep 8 mattress cover.
Mm. Well, I have heard of chili pads. I think that's another one other people have too, that
Yeah.
same sort of concept of cooling down the bed, and that you can have it different from your partner on the other side, because you may like different temperatures as well when you sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I was just going to say, we touched on cellular. You mentioned a few times about cellular damage and cellular aging. So, where does that come into play when we're talking about alcohol and its effects?
Yeah, so alcohol actually damages us on a cellular level. So it on the cellular level, it actually damages our DNA. It can actually mutate the expression of genes. And additionally, it damages our mitochondria. So the mitochondria are like the little powerhouses of the cell. They are what produce our energy. They are what metabolizes the energy from the food we're eating and consuming and turn it into energy we can use for our body. And so when we are drinking a lot, the toxins from the alcohol get into the cells, and the mitochondria help in like cleaning that out, but they get damaged in the process, and they need to be replaced. They have to get replaced. And so our body is really good at this in the beginning. They're like, oh, there's a damaged mitochondria, let's replace that. But eventually over time that wears out, and the function of the cell is no longer, the mitochondria are no longer able to produce that energy at that same rate. So the cell functions like stop what the cell's job is, wherever it is in your body, it stops functioning properly. And it just causes damage. Any organ that alcohol touches has cellular damage from alcohol, from the toxins. And this is something though that can be reversed. And it's really scary to hear about all this stuff because yes, it causes cancer, and yes, it causes brain damage, and yes, it causes all the cellular damage. But when you abstain long enough and you practice some other kind of biohacking techniques, you can heal. Your cells do turn over. We are miraculous creatures, and you will heal, and you will it feels like you reverse age in a way.
Mm. Well, I think so many people are probably familiar with like wrinkles and like, the
Mhm.
physical cellular damage, and that, we know that the sun can damage our cells. But when we're thinking internally, I think that's hard to, connect with and sometimes visualize, because you can't see it as well as you can see it on the outside.
Totally agree. I know. Except when you do stop drinking alcohol, you can really see it within a couple of days. Your eyes will look brighter, your skin will look brighter, you won't look as sunken. And a lot of that has to do with just the good sleep you're getting. And your liver is able to do what it's supposed to do, which is process toxins out of the body. And when you're no longer putting alcohol in it regularly, it can prioritize doing its job and process all the other toxins in our environment out. And so you start to look and feel better pretty quickly with that when you cut alcohol out.
Mm. And if someone's sort of listening in and they're thinking, yeah, maybe I do want to start to swap out the alcohol, but I still want to feel like, when I'm at a barbecue that I have a drink and, I'm still part of it. What are
Yeah.
some suggestions you may have that's, sort of good swaps for an alcoholic drink?
Oh, that's a great question. So, one thing I recommend people do before they go out and they're going to go for this is visualize that I can really have a good time alcohol free. And I want you to just close your eyes and literally picture yourself with your non-alcoholic beverage in hand, whatever it is, laughing, connecting, socializing, feeling really comfortable and enjoying. Because truly, the one thing you're removing is the alcohol. The people are still there, the music, the good food, the friends, all of that is still there. And oftentimes when we think we're not drinking, that all that fun is going to go away. So part of this is visualizing that it's possible. Create that possibility in your brain. That way your brain has seen it and you're like, okay, I am looking now to make this true. If we tell ourselves, I'm going to have a terrible time, I'm going to feel awkward as hell, this is just going to be boring, I'm not going to have any fun, your brain will try and make that true as well. This is cognitive bias at work, confirmation bias. So it can either work for you or against you. So yeah, I recommend definitely I'm drinking one right now. This is called Dram. Again, not affiliated in any way, but this is a sparkling water. It's a botanical sparkling water, so it doesn't have any natural flavors in it. It's flavored with plants and adaptogens, but there are so many non-alcoholic beverages right now. This industry is booming. In fact, all of the alcohol companies now, the big ones, have a non-alcoholic beverage that they're pushing, and it's like a market leader for them. So they're kind of like, if we can't beat them, let's join them. Let's create our own non-alcoholic beverage. I have a lot of brands I love. Hi-Yo is one of them. I don't know if you can get these in Australia, but I'd be curious if you can.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen the Dram one and I haven't heard of Hio, but I'm sure there would be others that would be very similar.
Yeah. And because you are a health related podcast, you got to watch out for like when you go out to restaurants, they have a lot of these mocktails. A lot of times those are just loaded with sugar. But that doesn't mean you also just have to go all the way and just drink sparkling water. Like there's so many other things in between there that are really good. And I've never been one to want something that like mimics alcohol, like a non-alcoholic wine or a non-alcoholic beer. A lot of people enjoy those. To me, I didn't ever really drink alcohol for the flavor or the taste. I was more of like a hard alcohol, like tequila. I was a bit of a pirate. I used to drink rum and cokes kind of thing. So I don't miss the taste of alcohol, but I do like having like a prop in hand. And you would be surprised at just replacing the drink in your hand kind of eliminates a lot of those cravings. If you're just sipping on something in the same environment, you'll be surprised how far that will carry you.
Mm. Well, I know myself because I only drink very occasionally now. But when I, started I made the decision that, I feel so much better when I don't drink any alcohol at all. So I just make this conscious decision that I don't want it. And I'd go to like a barbecue, I would take along, some kombucha with me or something for me to have a drink. But I was more worried about what other people, because I knew that they would be drinking and they would be like, oh, do you want a drink? And I'd be like, no, I'm fine, thanks. And they're like, oh, you don't, like there's something wrong with you because you don't want one. So I think I was more worried about that side of it. And so I just had to get a little bit more confident in myself and my decisions. And also just say to them, when I have alcohol, I don't usually feel amazing for it. So but I really like kombucha. So I have that instead.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's a very common feeling is what are other people going to think? Because our brain immediately goes to this kind of like shameful place because people are like, oh, you're not drinking? Like, why? It's either you're pregnant, you're on antibiotics, or you have a problem with alcohol. Because who would just say no to alcohol, right? And I really want to change that conversation. It should be applauded when somebody doesn't drink alcohol because ultimately you're pursuing wellness, you're pursuing health. If you were telling people, oh, I'm not going to, I know dieting kind of gets a bad rap too. Like, oh, I'm not eating carbs or I'm not eating sugar right now. People might tease you for that as well. But at the same time, this is ultimately all we have is our health. All we have is our wellness. And, being in pursuit of that isn't something to be ashamed of. And I think that the tides are turning, that more and more people are on this sober journey. And I don't even really like to use the word sober because that also implies that there was a problem. instead of it just being like, hey, it's not for me anymore. Like, I've got better things to do. I want to wake up tomorrow and feel good and like be able to do all the things that are in this beautiful life instead of feeling hungover and tired and unmotivated and snappy with my kids and bloated and my period's a mess. Like, it's just not worth it anymore. And again, I don't want people to think you have to be like me and abstain 100% of the time. Like, if you want to go to a special occasion and you want to have that drink, and this is something I will challenge with you, is if you think this is, I'm going to save this for special occasions. Like, why is the alcohol, why does that make it special? Because why is toxifying myself and wrecking my sleep and stuff, is it worth it? Is that really what makes it special? And so that's just something to investigate for your listeners. If they're like, okay, I'm only going to save it for that. I want to say, like, is that really, is that how you want to reward yourself on a special occasion, like a birthday or a celebration, right? Or is there something else you could reward yourself with? But ultimately, it comes down to how you feel about alcohol in your life. Like my husband, he's been on this journey with me for over 3 years. He has reduced his drinking over time to the point where he probably drinks maybe 10% of the time at like a work event or some sort of party. But he makes the conscious decision. He knows what he's trading off. He knows that like there's no like illusions about it. He's like, I know I'm going to feel like shit tomorrow. I know I'm going to be a little bit low energy, low mood. He does all these things to try and, detoxify himself. But at the end of the day, he knows the trade-off he's making and he's fine with that. And I'm okay with that too, right? So if that's you and you're okay with the once in a while, but if you're not, if you're like, I said I was going to have one and I ended up having four, and then I said I was only going to drink at this one event and then I ended up drinking 3 more times that week, then you realize that like it doesn't mean you have a problem. If it's just not showing up in your life the way that you want it to, then it's worth investigating and it's worth like trying to take a cold turkey break, because trying to moderate is way harder. It takes way more mental gymnastics than it does to just cut it cold turkey. And I tried this, like I made every rule under the sun for myself. And all I did was obsess. All I did, it took up so much space in my brain that I was like, this isn't, what am I doing? And the drinks I was allowing myself, I wasn't enjoying it because I was like, well, there's my 2 drinks for the week and now I'm done. And I would look and watch everybody else. And I was like, and now I'm done. So it moderation is a really tricky game. It's a lot easier and freeing when you make the decision to just shut the door and just try a 30-day break and see how you feel. You never have to say, I'm going to quit forever. No one wants to say they'll do anything forever. But if you just say, I'm going to do this 30 days, I'm going to commit. And most people are feeling so insanely good at the end of that 30 days. They're kind of like, why would I go back? I'm sleeping. I have authentic connections with people. I'm enjoying things in life that I haven't enjoyed in a really long time. And this other part of yourself, especially for women, starts to wake up again, because we've been so disconnected from ourselves this phase of motherhood, where we've sacrificed so much of ourselves. And when you get to kind of come out from under that again, and you're like, oh, that's right. Like, I'm a human. I have interests. I have passions. I have things that I am other than a mom who takes care of kids and drinks wine and works all the time. Right. So I recommend this, if not only just to explore that side of yourself again. Like, who am I without the alcohol that probably entered the picture when you were in your teen years, like me? It's been a really long time since we've socialized or coped without alcohol.
Well, culturally, do you know what I mean? For a lot of people, it is just part of, it's in your household as you're growing up. It's on the TV. You see the athletes celebrating after the game with alcohol, like it's in your face all the time.
Exactly. I am curious yeah, Australia is a pretty heavy drinking culture. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we all are, but yeah, I'm picturing like the rugby guys and
Yeah, and the football guys and the cricket guys and
yeah.
that's what I remember, growing up with is, they'd win something and then they'd all, be in the rooms, with the bottle going everywhere,
Yeah.
and it was associated with winning
Yeah.
so being a winner, and celebrating. So yeah, I can definitely have, relate to childhood memories of seeing all of that.
Isn't that amazing though? Like how much of the drinking culture is conditioned into our subconscious. Like, and that's really what I want your listeners to investigate too, is just start to catch yourself these beliefs about alcohol that are living in your subconscious that you're like, well, this is what I do when I wind down with my girlfriends is I drink wine because that's what you do. And it's like, but why? Why do you believe that? Because we've never really pulled it out of our subconscious and checked it out. And it's like, is this really how I want to do things anymore? So you have this opportunity and it starts to get you into an uncomfortable place because you're like, once you become aware that maybe alcohol isn't as good as it's cracked up to be, and then you realize, okay, I want to take a break. And then you realize, wow, this is really hard. And that's when you understand it's an addictive substance. At the end of the day, what it does to your pleasure circuits, it makes it addictive. It makes you crave it. And so it's really hard to take a break. There's no shame in having it be hard either. Like it's really hard to diet. It's really hard to do a workout routine. It's really hard to cut alcohol out of your life. So take it seriously and give it the attention it deserves. But it can be done by investigating these subconscious beliefs, these things that we've told ourselves our entire life about where alcohol fits in our life, and start questioning those.
Mm. And, I think that can be, you might decide that you go on a break to start. And then once you get comfortable with that break, that's when you can dive into some of, questioning those beliefs and think about it deeper and work
Yeah.
out, if you want to make this a long-term decision or if you're happy to put it back in occasionally or whatever it may be.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's completely up to you. I have a lot of clients who across the gamut who have, decided like I'm going to moderate, or some people decide that I want to quit entirely. And you never know, right? The life is long. I'm 3 years alcohol free, and I technically could drink at any time, but I don't want to. And that's really where I want to get people to, is to a place where there's no desire, there's no like tug of war in your brain where you're like, I'm just trying not to drink. A lot of traditional like not drinking programs like AA keep you in this place where they're like, something's wrong with you. You are flawed. Something, you're one of the unlucky ones. You became addicted, and it's probably due to your genes and your upbringing. And I have a completely different approach where I don't believe anything's wrong with you. I think you've been conditioned to drink. It's an addictive substance. And I'm sure you've got some sort of things going on in your life that you're coping with. And we've been told alcohol is the answer for that. And so we unwind all that and we say, alcohol is not helping you. What would actually help you? And so instead of focusing on like what you can't have, which is the alcohol, we focus on all the things you can do and all the wellness you can chase after. And once you shift that mindset again into what you're gaining, you don't feel deprived because we learn just how bad alcohol is for us. I hammer people with the science. I will talk about all the cancer causing. I will talk about what it's doing to your DNA, your hormonal health, and I'll say, why do you want to put this in your body when you could be putting this in your body and sleeping and feeling great and losing weight and remembering what you love in life. And once you're pursuing that, you don't desire the alcohol anymore.
Mm. And we've covered, obviously so much about, alcohol and hormonal balances and cellular aging. But is there anything that we haven't touched on today that you feel like we should include?
Um, Well, I could talk a little bit about my coaching offers that people, if they want to work with me, I have a variety of different programs. I know one-on-one coaching can feel really intimidating for people. And so that's why I've created a couple um, standalone courses that people can kind of just explore and dip their toe in as they see fit. Because I fully understand this is often a private journey. I know it was for me. I didn't tell anybody when I was going about my first kind of dry January, which I failed, by the way. And so I created a course called the Brave Course. And it's essentially just a self-paced course that you can do on your own time. It's me. I'm doing a bunch of coaching videos and journal prompts. There's over 20 different lessons and 7 modules. And it really takes you through the framework of changing those subconscious beliefs. And then we hack your actual physical habit, the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. So there's really like tangible things that you can put into practice. And then we work on creating a life that you don't have to check out from, where you're like, okay, it starts first thing in the morning. How am I waking up? What are my rituals? What am I telling my nervous system every day? Am I pounding caffeine and jumping straight into my phone? Or am I taking 5 minutes to go outside, see the sunset, move my body? Really, really simple rituals that you start to build into your life that tell your brain and body, like, I'm going to take care of you. I love you.
Mm.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
we
And
will
yeah,
definitely put that in the show notes and stuff as well. But,
sure.
I think having that support from someone, especially when you're going through this type of journey, can be super beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually used a coach at the start of my journey for about 4 months. And it's actually a big reason why I'm a coach today, because I just got so much out of it. Once I had kind of had the information under my belt and I knew I didn't want to drink anymore, I still had to navigate my world alcohol free, which was endlessly awkward. Let's be real. It was hard. A lot of awkward conversations with family, friends, my husband, and having someone I could talk to who had been through that and had some really wise advice on how to navigate that was just priceless. It was so helpful for me.
Mm. And I always love to ask my guests before we wrap up if there's one piece of health advice that you could give to listeners that they could go off and instigate straight away after listening to this podcast, what would it be?
For women in your 40s, I would say that you do not have to suffer this decade of your life. You don't have to accept the decline in your mental health, in your physical health. You can take agency back and you can make some decisions around your nutrition and around your use of alcohol that will completely level up your health. And it really takes just some awareness, some basic awareness, and retraining your brain to reward yourself in ways that are actually good for you, that are actually going to be healthy and sustainable for you over time.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing this information because I think it's such amazing information to get out there, and especially for women as we're aging, it's all helpful to help balance our hormones. But where can listeners reach out, connect with you, and find out more about your programs as well?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been great. You can find me at findmyselffree.com. That's my website. I also have a podcast on Apple that's called Find Myself Free, the podcast. And I split my time there between doing talking about alcohol as well as talking about hormone balancing. Yeah, those are the two things. Oh, and there's one more program. If alcohol isn't the main kind of challenge in your life, if you really just want to focus on hormone balancing, I have a really low entry offer. It's just called a balance challenge. It's 28 days for $28, and it's a cycle syncing challenge. So I teach you all about hormonal health. And there is like a live community in there where you can chat and ask questions about your cycle. And I help you guys start cycle syncing.
Amazing. Well, we'll link all of those up in the show notes too. So listeners head there to check those out. But again, thanks coming on the podcast today, Ellie. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Kate. Take care.